Well, it finally happened, folks. The bluff got called. Chuck Schumer thought he could outsmart President Trump with the longest shutdown in American history, using it as leverage to shovel hundreds of billions of your taxpayer dollars straight into the pockets of what Trump just called the money-sucking insurance giants. But guess what, guys? President Trump, he didn't flinch. He didn't cave. He just went ahead and flipped the entire table. And so now Chuck Schumer's scheme has blown up in his face. So tonight, I'm going to break down how the shutdown showdown just turned into a populist revolution and how Trump's move to send those billions directly to the American people has every Democrat scrambling to defend the very corporations that they claim that they hate. And so while Washington melts down, the ripple effects, they're already shaking Wall Street, rocking the healthcare lobby, and exposing a decades-old scam that funneled your hard-earned money to political insiders. Now, you're about to see why the headlines are calling it Trump's masterstroke, how this one play could rewrite the rules of power in Washington forever, because what started as a shutdown, it's ending as a showdown between the people and the machine. Now, this is Trump Strikes Back. Chuck Schumer's money-sucking scheme just blew up in his face. Now, I want to go ahead and dive in immediately because once you see what just happened behind the scenes, you're going to realize that this is not a blunder. This was a straight up checkmate. Hit the like button and subscribe. It is now day 38 of the government shutdown, and Washington looks like a poker table where the dealer just walked away. Federal employees are still on edge, airports are running skeleton crews, and ordinary Americans are caught in the crossfire. Meanwhile, Chuck Schumer tries to bluff his way into a $1 trillion victory. His grand plan? Use the shutdown to force President Trump into extending Obamacare subsidies. Massive corporate kickbacks dressed up as compassion. Now, Chuck Schumer, he thought Trump was going to cave under pressure, just like every other Republican before him. But this isn't 2013 or 2018. No, it is 2025, and the man in the Oval Office doesn't fold. So while Washington insiders are panicking over paychecks, Trump is calmly watching the cards fall because he already knows one thing that Chuck Schumer never learned. When you build power on illusion, reality always calls your bluff. Because behind all the slogans and the sob stories, Schumer's real play was very simple. Keep the money-sucking insurance cartel on life support. Now, his bill would have funneled hundreds of billions of dollars straight to the very corporation that his own party spent decades claiming that they hate. Now, analysts estimated that up to 30% of those subsidies vanish into administrative waste and overnight fraud. This is money that never lowers your premium, never pays your doctor, and never helps your family one bit. This is corporate welfare strapped into a healthcare ribbon. Democrats called it helping the working class. But I want you to ask yourself, serious question, guys. How many times have we heard that before? Like, only to find out that our money goes everywhere else except to the people, right? Just drop a yes if you agree. Now, this is the game that Chuck Schumer's been running for years. Take your tax dollars, hand them over to the lobbyists over there, and then pretend it's compassion. Then came the moment that nobody in Washington, D.C. saw coming. President Trump took to Truth Social, and in one post, he rewrote the entire healthcare debate. He said, in effect, fine, if you want to spend hundreds of billions of dollars on healthcare, send it to the people, not to the corporations. He proposed the National Health Savings Account, giving every American direct control over their own healthcare dollars. Doctor visits, prescriptions, preventative care, all without the middlemen. Now, this is classic America First populism. Cut the bureaucracy, empower the citizen. In one stroke, he exposed what Washington elites fear the most: ordinary Americans deciding for themselves. And so instead of funneling cash through a maze of agencies and executives, Trump said, let the people choose. And that, my friends, this is what detonated Chuck Schumer's entire strategy. Now, here's why this move has strategists across the aisle shaking. Trump didn't just reject Chuck Schumer's bill. He flipped the optics upside down. All of a sudden, Democrats, the self-proclaimed warriors against corporate greed, they were forced to defend insurance CEOs over working families. So, within hours, Senator Chris Murphy, he called Trump's idea nonsensical, but he couldn't explain why giving ordinary Americans their own money was nonsense. Meanwhile, Senator Rick Scott, he announced that he had drafted legislation to make Trump's plan real. Even Lindsey Graham, ever the establishment barometer, called it brilliant. Trump had cornered the opposition. Every argument that they had made against him now sounded like an argument against you. He turned this shutdown crisis into a populist masterclass, forcing Washington to reveal who they really work for. Is it the people or is it the profiteers? I think it's pretty obvious right now. Now, imagine opening a bill for $800 because your Medicare plan didn't cover what you thought it did. Now, it happens every day. This is why I partnered with Chapter. They review your Medicare coverage so that you never get that kind of surprise in the mail. Now, one of our viewers, she said, Chapter saved me from a bill I could never have paid on my own. So let me ask you, are you ready for surprises? Or are you joining the thousands who already have avoided them? Now, most people are already dialing the phone number right there on the bottom of your screen, or they're visiting askchapter.org/Ron. And here's what one of our viewers had to say about their experience. So Jeannie Wyatt said, I got my brother to speak with Janet from Chapter. He signed up today and saved $3,000. Greatly appreciated. And almost instantly, you could pretty much smell the panic inside the Democratic Party. Moderates started whispering about reassessing Schumer's strategy, while progressive activists melted down online, screaming that Trump had hijacked their talking points. Cable anchors who once cheered Chuck Schumer's tough stance suddenly shifted their tone. They're like labeling the president's move as being reckless populism. Exactly. Their words, not mine. But behind the camera, staffers were terrified. I mean, the polls are already showing Trump's approval rising during the shutdown. Think about that for a second, okay? The longer the government stayed closed, the more Americans saw Trump as the only actual person that was fighting for them. And so while Democrats were bickering on live TV, the party's internal fractures continued to widen. They weren't just losing the message, they were losing their own identity. The bluff was collapsing and Schumer was left holding the political grenade that he had just pulled the pin on. Now, outside the Beltway, the pain was real. Federal workers missing paychecks, air traffic delays, and entire departments frozen. But somehow, someway, Trump's support didn't crumble. It strengthened. Why? Because people finally understood that the fight wasn't about a budget. It was about who owns the system. Schumer was protecting corporate subsidies while Trump was trying to redirect the money to the citizens. Every unpaid paycheck became a symbol of Washington's broken priorities. Military families and TSA agents, they weren't blaming Trump. They were blaming the political theater. And as days turned into weeks, the president's approval ticked upward because Americans saw something new. Americans saw a leader willing to endure the fire to expose the corruption. So what was meant to break Trump instead revealed how deeply the swamp feared losing control of the cash flow. So what we're watching right now isn't just a political fight. This is a realignment of power. For decades, both parties operated under one rule: trust the system, not the people. Well, Trump shattered that. Like, he broke it into a billion pieces. He's built an empire movement on a simple idea: trust Americans to make their own decisions. It's really simple, actually. And so meanwhile, Chuck Schumer and his allies cling to the old model: centralized control, endless bureaucracy, and experts who always seem to profit while everybody else is struggling. This divide, trust versus control, this is reshaping the entire country, folks. Working class voters, Latinos, independents, many who once voted Democrat, mind you, they're now backing Trump because he's speaking their language: freedom, fairness, self-reliance. Look, the Democrats promised safety. President Trump promised sovereignty. And that promise is turning the political map inside out. And just like that, Washington's power games, they started shaking the markets. Health insurance stocks dipped as investors realized the gravy train might finally derail. Meanwhile, small business optimism soared, entrepreneurs saying that they finally saw a government that believed in them instead of regulating them to death. Even Elon Musk chimed in online, praising President Trump's approach as decentralizing revolution, essentially saying direct-to-consumer control always beats bureaucratic waste. Wall Street calls it chaos, Main Street calls it clarity, and for the first time in years, ordinary citizens felt like they might actually have leverage over the system. That is the difference between populism and politics. One trusts people to build, the other trusts politicians to control. And the markets just gave their verdict on which side the future belongs to. And so while Washington was unraveling, another disaster was unfolding up north. New York's new progressive mayor, Zoran Mamdani, he came into office preaching equity, justice, and just free everything. But within 72 hours of winning, the mask slipped. He jetted off to this luxury resort in Puerto Rico, clinking glasses with lobbyists and donors. Meanwhile, the city that he promised to fix slid deeper and deeper into chaos. Then came this all-women transition team stunt that turned out to be stuffed with insiders from failed past administrations. Look, his base felt betrayed. Even his own supporters started asking, did we just get played? Drop a play down below if you think they just got played. In fact, the timing was poetic. As Chuck Schumer's federal bluff collapsed, Mamdani's local fantasy imploded. Two faces of the same illusion, progressive promises built on hypocrisy and self-enrichment. And where were people going? People were going to Florida. Private jet bookings out of New York spiked nearly 50% after Mamdani's win as residents fled crime, taxes, and overreach for sunshine and sanity. Real estate agents in Miami and Fort Lauderdale, they reported record contracts. Homes that once sat for months are now selling in days. Florida didn't just reopen after lockdowns. In fact, it reinvented itself as the symbol of competence and freedom. Governor Ron DeSantis' policies turned it into America's escape hatch from progressive failure. Guys, this is proof that Americans vote with their feet, migrating toward trust and opportunity, way far away from control and decay. This is what's happening in Florida. And what's happening in Florida, this is not luck. This is a preview of what happens nationwide when leadership puts people first and bureaucracy last. Now, Schumer's meltdown wasn't an isolated moment. No, it was part of something much bigger. Trump has been quietly building a populist economic offensive that cuts across party lines. He ordered the DOJ to investigate meatpacking monopolies accused of price fixing, calling them out for driving up grocery bills while Americans struggle to afford dinner. Then he floated this idea of 50-year mortgages, a plan to help first-time home buyers lower payments and finally afford a home. Now, these are not corporate policies, they're kitchen table policies. Each one chips away at the powerful middlemen who have controlled everything from your food to your finances. Look, the message is simple. If the system won't fix itself, he'll just bulldoze through it until it serves the people again. Can I get an amen, guys? And this is exactly what scares Washington the most. Everyone talks about financial freedom, but here's the truth. There's no freedom without security. So ask yourself, if 2026 brings another market crash, are you protected? That's the exact question that made me partner with Noble Gold Investments. Because they don't sell fear, they build confidence. They'll show you step by step how to secure your retirement with physical gold and silver held in your name safely and transparently. And once people see it for themselves, they always say, well, that makes sense. And so this is why most people are planning smart for the year ahead, and they're calling Noble Gold at the phone number down below on your screen right there, 877-646-5347, or they're visiting ronyatesgold.com to get their free wealth protection kit. There's a link for you down below, totally free. Peace of mind doesn't come from watching the markets. It comes from taking control. And this year, that's your move. Now, you can feel it in DC. Washington, D.C. just doesn't run the same way that it used to. The shutdown didn't just freeze government, it rebooted it. Trump's counterstrike against Schumer, this exposed an entire ecosystem built on the dependency, bureaucrats, consultants, and career politicians who just can't survive if citizens start thinking for themselves. Now, for the first time in decades, Republicans aren't just talking about tax cuts, they're talking about direct-to-citizen economics, transparency, simplicity, empowerment. That's the new platform. The swamp is panicking because this runs on confusion and control, and President Trump just unplugged both. So this is the moment that Washington got rewired, when the populist movement stopped being a campaign slogan and became a governing philosophy. And you can pretty much just see it spreading far beyond politics. It's changing the culture itself. Now, beneath all the headlines, there's something deeper that's stirring this country. Americans are tired, not tired of working, not tired of sacrifice, but they're tired of being lied to by people who think that they know better. They're craving fairness, not handouts, competence, not control. Trump's message, trust the people, cuts across every demographic line, from blue-collar workers in Michigan to retirees in Arizona. Even lifelong Democrats are quietly admitting that they'd rather be trusted than managed. And so that's the moral shift that's happening right now, a rebellion against condescension. This is why Trump's rallies feel less like political events and more like cultural awakenings. People aren't worshiping a politician, they're rallying behind an idea that America still belongs to them, not the bureaucrats or the billion-dollar corporations that are pretending to care. And so the world is watching this realignment in real time. European newspapers are calling it the Great American Reset, as nations from Italy to Japan study President Trump's populist model, government that runs on trust and production, not dependency. Foreign investors are rebalancing their portfolios, shifting capital from global NGOs and green bureaucracies right into U.S. manufacturing and energy. They see the writing on the wall. America's comeback isn't just political, it's economic and it's cultural. Global elites who once mocked populism are now fearing its momentum. Even in Canada and the UK, citizens are echoing the exact same question. If America can trust its people again, why can't we? So this isn't isolationism, this is influence. And Trump, once again, has turned domestic rebellion into international inspiration. So where does all of this lead, guys? I'll tell you where it leads. It leads to something far bigger than politics. It's becoming a movement that's built on trust. Trump called Schumer's bluff and exposed how deep the rot runs, how Washington's compassion was really just corruption dressed in red, white, and blue. And so now Americans are seeing right through it. They're leaving failed cities for freedom states. They're demanding power flow downward, back to the families, the workers, the dreamers who keep this country alive. This isn't just Trump versus Schumer, guys. This is control versus confidence. Fear versus freedom. And the people are finally choosing freedom. So I'm going to go ahead and leave you with this, okay? Do you think that the Democrats will double down, or are they going to finally admit that they've been outplayed? Drop your thoughts down below, hit the like button, and share this video so that more people wake up to what's really happening, because the bluff is over and America just flipped the deck.